Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, Jimmy Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, Tommy Duncan.
And then our special guest.
Hi everyone, John Dawes. Glad to be here today.
So today we are going to do a continuation of the 5 biggest problems in our community with black men. We started out recently talking about high incarceration rates within our community. Then we moved from there, of course, to homicide, especially black-on-black violence. And then we did a special segment on unemployment and unemployment.
Yes.
Now we're advancing to the next step, which is money. And we're actually going to address 2, money and power. And depending on, there you go, and depending on how far along our show goes, we may have to do 2 segments, but we'll try to do our best for you to get it all within one show.
We're going to try, so let's see how it goes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about money and the black man and why this is a particular problem within our community and black men.
Well, one, of course, you need money to live and to do anything, but we can't use money or a lack of money as an excuse not to do the things that we know that we should be doing. One, being responsible with our family and with our families and taking care of them and providing a lifestyle that they can appreciate should be job one. Well, the other thing is saving for bad days, having money to buy your home with, if you decide to be a homeowner, to go out and purchase a car, or to save for retirement or for a rainy day. These are all things that takes money, or even to start that business to help create jobs in your community and provide a product or service to the people of that area.
Okay, good deal. Tell me your perspective on this time.
Money. Well, so
Jays.
as I just said earlier, I'm really big on the basics, and so in terms of money, some of the challenges that we definitely face as black men is looking to the right and to the left in terms of what other people in our community have and what other cultures may have, and not understanding kind of the backdrop that plays a very significant role in regards of those different realities. And so part of that is residing in our own reality. Not that it's substandard, right? But that our picture may look different than other people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that once we know what it is and what it isn't, taking those proper steps, and again, basics, I can't stress it enough. There's nothing wrong with higher levels of achievement and education, et cetera, but the basics must be taken care of. And so with education, it's keeping that debt low, right? And remember I said earlier that education is for everyone. I've now evolved past the myth that I believed so long that college is for everyone. This is not true. But education is for everyone, and keeping that debt low is key towards beginning to establish a firm foundation for yourself financially and the things that you want to do in the present, in particular the things that you want to do in the future. And then additionally, as I said, just on a very basic level, there's more to say than I'll say later, but not looking to the right or to the left, that's what other people are doing, because that will really, not only really has tripped a lot of us up in terms of chasing after that dream, whether it be, a certain kind of car or a certain kind of zip code, and believing that it will afford us certain privileges. A lot of the tragedies of the last several years have really dispelled that myth, that the zip code does not equal certain privileges or considerations.
No, it doesn't.
And so, it's remaining grounded in what you can bring to the table, what you have in your hand, and also keeping in mind the places that you want to go and how to get there.
And looking at it from another perspective, I mean, since we do live in the United States, the foundation of which, of course, is capitalism, at the end of the day, money and wealth is primarily the basis for power and access within our country. And so looking at that from an individual perspective as men and or collectively, if you don't have access to, or if you're not able to wield that money power, that financial power, it puts you at a competitive disadvantage, not just collectively in our community in terms of being able to compete, but also if you look at your own household, when you look at yourself as a father and or as a husband. At the end of the day, if you are in a household with a spouse and she is making more money than you do, you're going to be having very specific conversations when it comes to what you're going to get, when, and why, starting with the type of house.
But you still need to, I believe, you can call me chauvinist if you want to.
Sure.
I still believe that the man has to provide some leadership in that relationship,
True.
in that dynamic. And even if your significant other, wife, girlfriend, living, whatever you want to call it, makes more money than you, that does not alleviate the responsibility that's placed on your shoulder as the leader of that household. So you need to still have a plan, make sure the bills get paid on time, that things are not being turned off, especially if there's kids involved, that there's adequate food for the family, that the basic needs are taken care of. Now you could discuss and have some give and take about which investment instruments you're going to put money into and where you're going to have vacation, how much you're going to spend on that. But the basic financial plan should be in place. You should have one. If you do not have one, and I hear this from guys all the time who have allowed their significant other, their wife, to take more of a leadership role than them, and then when they want to do something, she vetoes it, and they realize that they're not in charge of that household, she is. And of course, one of the natural reactions is if the man can't be a man and be the leader in that household, he generally doesn't want to be in the household. Or he sticks around and he's just totally defeated, where he doesn't want to have anything to do with his woman. You know, spend more time on PlayStation than he does with her. Doesn't talk to her. I hear women complain. He comes home and he's playing video games and does this, and he doesn't say 10 words to me. Well, you know what? There's a good chance that you've beaten him down, stepped all over him, squashed him up under your powerful foot,
well, if I'm here,
and emasculated him to the point that he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Why would a man want to be involved with you when you've done this to him? So,
no, I mean, you bring up a very good point.
so money management and having a plan is just
I understand. You're very correct. But the point being is because of the basis of power typically being done.
We're not gonna.
Typically having to do with the finances within your
So I don't need
community.
to run it today.
And
It'll.
But still, though, if you're going to be a leader, lead.
9,
Even if
12.
even if you make less money, I mean, you just can't get around that. So
I'm trying to figure out why.
guys, we apologize for some of the background discussions. So hopefully we can just push through it, and you guys still understand what we're saying. So what about you, Jenna? What is your should the man take a back seat to his significant other simply because she makes more money than him?
Not at all, not at all, not at all.
See, you might be called a caveman just like they
It's all
call
right,
me.
it's all right, John Alex does. I am a caveman.
you're right. But the challenge is this: not that the husband should not be the leader and have a plan. I would agree with that. The challenge is in a lot of cases when the husband taking on his traditional role is not the breadwinner. Typically, unfortunately, there's a lot of conflict that comes into a play because sometimes the spouse says, well, look, I'm the breadwinner in this house. And so therein begins the conflict. And I'm not suggesting that what you're saying, I believe what you're saying is absolutely correct. But in too many cases, and some I've heard from directly, when you are not the breadwinner in your house, not to make it right, you come into conflict with the spouse when you're supposed to be the spiritual head of your household.
So what I would say to that is if you can't lead, then don't be there, bottom line. Because what you're doing becomes unnatural. And you are going to have conflicts and problems. Anytime you have a household with a weak man who can't lead and provide leadership that his wife so desperately needs and his kids are going to require and look up to, if he can't provide that, if he doesn't need to be there, you're doing more damage than good. So don't think that, oh, I'm just going to stick around here and take it and everything's going to be okay. All you're really doing is creating the next generation of offspring who think that this lifestyle is acceptable and it's not.
Okay, well, let's talk facts here. So if we look at the high school and graduation rates of black women versus black men in
Black
America.
males are dismal.
There you go. Black women are leading black men. If we look, maybe not in the above the glass ceiling, we're talking about the CEOs,
Correct.
but black women are beginning to far outpace black men in terms of professional opportunity, not just in corporate America, but entrepreneurially as well. And so, as a matter of fact, among all groups, the black woman now, I believe, may be the
She's
fastest
the most
growing
successful
absolutely.
of all individual groups in America. So we talk about the Asian community being having the highest median income. The black woman for the last decade has been the most successful among all
Absolutely,
of us.
absolutely.
You're right, for as rising income
and so that
wealth.
begs to the question: when you bring these two folks together and they're having a discussion about that, the size of that house, how much house, and where that house is going to be, and you have a sister who is saying, well, look, you know, I'm making 200, 300 grand, and I understand that as a teacher, maybe a high school teacher, you're making under six figures. So why are you telling me that we can't get this much house?
Right.
That is a financial question, or that is a financial conversation.
And you better have a
needs to
very
access
good
the-
financial answer to go with that. That's logical and reasonable, and you have to keep reiterating that answer over and over to make sure she understands, because the emotion of the decision are going to always outweigh and overtake the logic of the decision. So for us, like for instance, many, many years ago, after my divorce, I was dating another lady, and we were going to plan on getting married. And she made more money than me. She had a nice house. She had a nicer house than me. She didn't want to live in my house. I didn't really want to live in her house, so we were going to buy a house together. But I wanted to buy a house that I could afford. And it was the same thing. Why can't we get the bigger house that she wanted? Because collectively,
There we go.
we make more money.
Absolutely.
And the answer to that is, I firmly believe, like my father told me growing up, is that a man should always be able to provide for his house. You don't take money from your wife to pay for a house or a home. You make sure that wherever you lay your head is a place that you can afford to lay your head.
Okay, so with that being said, scenario, she's making 250 grand a year.
Mm-hmm.
She's an executive with a company. You're making 80 to 90 grand per year. You're saying we're going to
I'm saying you buy the starter house, yes.
We're buying the house
For
not the one-
$100,000. Not the $400,000 house that
she can afford.
That she can afford. Together, you guys, say are making almost $300,000, $400,000 that you can afford together. I'm saying you buy the $100,000 starter house that you can afford on $80,000 salary. And here's why: because hopefully you buy that house for 100 grand, and within a year and a half, with the second income that you have from your spouse, you should be able to totally pay for that house. You should be debt free after a year and a half with another $250,000 in salary coming in. Now you take this, and then you decide to put that house on the market and sell it, and then you move on to your next house. Let's say your next house is for $250,000. You can still afford a $150,000 mortgage on your own, plus the $100,000 you get from the previous house. Now you're into a much larger home with a footprint financially that still you can afford by yourself on one salary. If you lose your job, your wife makes enough where she can carry things for a while until you get back on your feet. If she loses her job, more importantly, you can still provide and keep a roof over your head. And let's say a couple of years down the road, if that house is still not large enough, you can take your $350,000 house, you should be able to have it paid off within 2 or 3 years with the extra income that you have, and now you're only 5 years in this whole process, and now you can say, honey, now we can go get the 6 or 7, let's say the $500,000 house that you've always wanted, the dream house, and this is going to be it. And we only have to maybe borrow another $150,000, and I can afford to pay the mortgage myself when we sell our $350,000 house. Once again, 2 years later, you should be able to have that house paid for. So in 7 years, she can have the house that she wants, her dream house, be debt-free, 2 incomes coming in, it's almost $400,000, and living the life, versus we buy the $500,000 house today, all we have is a huge mortgage and cost that's hanging over our head for the next 30 years.
Let me hop in right there for a minute. All what Jimmy said is seriously important. Primarily what is most important to me, kind of revolves back around to you as a man and as a person in that relationship. Really for both, honestly, because how many of us honestly stick with jobs and situations and put up with foolishness that we know we're not being treated right, we know we're not being respected, we know we're not being valued or undervalued, but we continue to just stick it out.
Sure.
And often the foolish hope that it will change, knowing underneath that it won't, and that tension beginning to spill over in other parts of your relationship, of your health, et cetera, et cetera. There's a cost to all of that when you go outside of your means and you look to the right or the left, or you think that that your incomes represent this reality, when as a matter of fact it really doesn't, because that's just what it is on the surface, and I could change it at any time.
Change it any time.
Change it any time.
And guess what? You buy the big house. What goes with the big house?
Big furniture.
Big furniture, and at least 2 big cars. So it's not just the debt of the home. It's the furniture, the trappings. It is her car, his car. If she wants a big house, she's gonna want the big nice car to go with it. So even if you scale down yours, you're still talking about 2 vehicles, and you can easily find yourself with $600,000 or $700,000 in debt. Plus your daily living, the credit cards and everything else. You may say, oh, okay, we can manage that amount of debt. Our debt is only 2 times more than our income. But then Uncle Sam wants it cut out of your money. And then, like you said, God forbid, something happened to either one of those jobs, the whole house could collapse in on you because you don't make enough money to service it all. Especially if something happens to her job. They may be able to survive him losing the job for a while, but if she loses her job, it's all over. The game's over.
Those trappings leaving you what? Trapped.
Trapped, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that kind of argument is what you have to explain to your significant other on an ongoing basis to get her to accept the plan that, look, I'm not opposed to giving you your dream home. I just need you to work with me, give me 7 years. We're not even going to live in poverty between now and then.
Right.
But in 7 years, if we do this right, we just start a home, our next step up home, our medium home after that, and our final home. Or maybe we can cut one of those steps out, and we'll get to that dream home in about 5 to 7 years. If you do that, we'll be so much better off because we'll be in a house at that point with a small mortgage, and that we easily pay off quickly. And then after that, we have the rest of our lives to accumulate wealth.
So we've already talked a little bit about finances when it comes to the relationship, which is very specific to men. Now let's talk about men and money when it comes to the level of competition. And when we talk about
competition in a relationship or competition in society?
Within society, whether we're talking corporate America, whether we're talking about competition in entrepreneurship space, being your own business person, just generally speaking, when we look at the black man, money, the ability to be able to compete financially on a corporate level, not in terms of the context of his household relationship, but in the context of you being able to compete in America.
And I think for that, we once again need to draw on what is our strong suit in our community. Everything in America, for the most part, you look at every Fortune 5,000 company, for instance, they're all built on investment. Very few are built by a individual taking his or her money and growing this thing off the ground. Most of them start with most of their money and some other people's money to get started. We have to be able to do the same thing. Come together in groups and talk about the need as to why I need you and you and you and you and you to invest in my future. Here's what the returns are going to be. Here's why it's important. And so investment groups coming together, we do well in communal situations. We don't do well with trust situations, but we have to get over that. And if we don't, it's going to be very difficult for the
Can you be more specific when you say trust situations?
That if we come together and raise a pool of money, everyone's looking at the pile and wondering who's going to run off with the pile, and then next week I need my money back out of the pile because my rent had to be paid, and I didn't realize while I was giving you this money that I was going to be short. So it really, you don't really need the money, you just don't trust the money being there. Mm-hmm. So you create a situation in your mind or a sense of urgency that I need to go get that money back before someone steals it or runs off with it. But we can't just go to Wall Street and raise capital. the way we need it. And we understand that. We've been complaining about the banks not loaning us money, and certainly investment groups not loaning us money, but we can come together and build mega churches. So that at least lets me know that as a group, we can come together and raise a significant amount of money in small chunks if we have a large enough pool of people. And we may have to do that route, the GoFundMe route, the GoFundMe type sites, or being able to call groups of people together and make an argument for why, like you were talking about the other gentleman who had the app for black men. Okay, if you're trying to now grow that and go international with it, go global with it, and you need capital to do that, why not be able to meet with various groups of black people who have some extra money? I'm not talking about your rent money, not talking about your food money, but who may be able to sacrifice the club money, your cigarettes money, your liquor money, and invest that for where you're
that
going.
could be important.
Well, there's no return on that investment now. Come on. Now, once you consume it, it's gone. Hopefully, you can put a little money into somebody, like, for instance, when we were talking about Sweet Georgia Brother, and I was trying to do the investment. I was actually talking to people about trying to come together, and my plan was that if you can afford $20 a week, that's not going to break the bank, that would be, and if I can get 100 people who can afford $20 a week, that would be $100,000 a year that we can raise, and take that money and buy into a franchise or a business. And that business starts off with 100 customers. It has somebody in our group is an attorney, so I don't need to go out and pay any money for legal fee. Somebody in here is an accountant, so I don't need to have an accountant do the books. We have someone within our group who can do that. Someone here is a marketing specialist. Someone here knows how to build websites. Within that 100 people, I guarantee you everything that little business needs is going to have somebody in it that knows what they're doing and how to deliver that. The second part of it is that, let's say in year one, at the end of the first year, sales are okay, but they're not stellar. And if we just had another round of investment, we can actually expand the place and do even better. Because you've identified some shortcomings, you know where the pits are, and you just need more money to get it to the next level. Well, if you have an investment group behind you, well, after that first year, you should have another $100,000 to either expand that business or put it into another business to help out. So these are things that we can do. It doesn't take a lot of people. I'm not talking about 10,000 folks. Just 100 people that come up with $20 a week. And a poor person working at McDonald's can squeeze out $20 out of their paycheck every week. So this is not an impossible task, but we don't do it because we think that somehow we're supposed to be able to have equal access to Wall Street, walk up the Wall Street with our wheelbarrow, walk into one of those investment bankers, and they're just going to fill it up with money, and then we're going to carry the wheelbarrow back home and spend it on our business. It just doesn't work that way.
Gotcha. Let me get your perspective on the whole money thing and being able to compete, you know, at the global level. And we're talking specifically black men and money and the ability to be able to compete, and then we can kind of pull this together.
Tommy, I'll say it again, kind of reside in reality. And so, you know, as Jimmy said, and rightfully so, you know, our rules currently are written differently.
Yes.
And that's a fact of the matter right now. But with that said, in no way should that be the deciding factor of whether we advance or not.
Sure.
Because we've had example after example from our forefathers and foremothers, both black women and black men, of how they had arguably even less access to opportunity, but still made it happen. In some cases at even higher levels. And so residing in that reality, taking those lessons from the past, group economics. I don't care how many, where you went to school, what you have in front of your name, what you have behind your name. To me, there'll never be a time when group economics is not important for black people, particularly black men. I say particularly black men because we are very much so undercapitalized right now.
We are. For
variety of reasons. These headlines that we see of men of this, men of that, particularly black men of this, black men of that, black men are trash. Well, I don't subscribe to any of it. All right? And part of why I don't subscribe to any of it is because how can we expect better for someone while at the same time putting them down? Raise the standard, right? Call out what it is in terms of what it is and what it isn't in terms of what needs to to improve. But also don't forget the other part of the story. As y'all discussed earlier, mass incarceration is huge. I mean, with a capital H, a huge issue in our communities. So it's unreasonable to expect this level of progress to have been necessarily achieved when there's been this this gigantic portion of our community taken out and literally working for pennies on the dollar per day. You know, we don't talk about that as often, but that's modern day slavery. You know, that's the reality of that part. But so and there's a real consequence to that in terms of additional generations and how they regard themselves and how they regard our black women and how they regard the community and society at large. But there's still there's still a way to turn that around. And part of that is dealing with where we're at right now. Again, I can't stress the basics enough of challenging the status quo with our schools, challenging the status quo within our politics, and beginning to uplift the reality and the necessity of us beginning to trust one another. The resources, as Jimmy illustrated, are there. We just have to begin to be absolutely serious about the business of bringing those resources
and demonstrating
together.
that we're serious.
Absolutely.
And it probably would not hurt to maybe help with some of the healing that you were just talking about. The tension between the black man and the black woman. The black man has not always historically done right by the black woman. Left her with children and forcing her to be the husband, the wife, the mother, the father in these households. Something that she naturally is not equipped to do, but has been forced to do it. Acquire these additional skills in order to make do the best of her ability. So maybe it would be a good gesture for collectively for black men, even though you talk to black men today and they say, well, I didn't do it. You know, it wasn't me. I don't have any children out of wedlock. Why should I be apologizing? But maybe collectively for us to, as a group, to say we're sorry, that we haven't always done it right. We're going to try to do better, like you said, and demonstrate that we're about business now. Because you know who has a source of money? Black women, because they work. So maybe that's an opportunity for a black man who's undercapitalized to make peace with your black woman, apologize, continue to apologize, and get serious about business, like you said. Some of it may require some additional training, some schooling, maybe a mentor program with people who are successful in business. But for us to demonstrate that this is where we are and that we need your help because you have something that's very difficult for us to come by, which is the capital that we may need in order to do this. So what are your thoughts, Tom? And
I will, I'll add a few things to that because I think these are very poignant statements that you're both making. I think there are a couple of things. It has to, in my perspective, it has to do with knowledge and discipline. Whether you're making a little money or a lot of money, in order to get access and to grow the money, you have to have some knowledge and you have to have some discipline. What do I mean by that? First, it's real basics. You talk about getting to the basics. Having a concept of financial literacy. Looking at everything that you have from a balance sheet point of view as opposed to looking at it as balancing a checkbook. Right. Balancing a checkbook just basically says, where are you spending your money, how much you have left. But when you look at your life and you look at your resources from a balance sheet perspective, it gives you a roadmap in terms of